Hello, I'm Bill Brewer. I grew up in Parsons and went to high school with Gilbert. We knew each other beyond the classroom as we shared an interest in the school's theater productions and belonged to some of the same clubs and organizations. After graduation, I went on to college, eventually receiving my MFA in costume design from Carnegie Mellon University. A few years later, in 1982, I took a faculty position at San Francisco State University. In those days, before classes would begin, we would receive printed rosters of our class enrollments. I was teaching an Introduction to Costume Design course. It was a prerequisite to several more advanced courses and courses on the graduate level. I noticed the name Gilbert Baker on my class list. I immediately flashed back to the Gilbert Baker I went to high school with and then thought, no, it couldn't possibly be. Baker is a common enough name, and while Gilbert isn't as common, there has to be more than one person named Gilbert Baker. I really didn't give it much more thought. I remember walking into the costume studio for the first class meeting and scanning the room. There, sitting in the back corner, was my high school friend, the Gilbert Baker. Suddenly, as if a tornado was headed right towards me, I was lifted off my feet and twirled around the room. When I regained footing on solid ground, I turned to the rest of the class, students I had yet to meet, their eyes wide, their mouths hanging open, and proceeded to introduce them to Gilbert Baker. After class, Gilbert and I headed out to grab a coffee and catch up. It had been 13 years since we had graduated and left Parsons. Gilbert, already an artist in his own right, had enrolled in my class in hopes of gaining a better understanding of the elements and principles of design as they applied to costume design, and was interested in other classes as well, primarily pattern making. Seems that Gilbert was hell-bent on creating his own one-of-a-kind couture drag costumes, and believe me, he did. Before I leave that alone, I'll just say that Gilbert was not a pretty drag, but he was one hell of a performer. It had been 4 years earlier that Gilbert had created the original Pride flag while working at Paramount Flag Company in San Francisco. He told me that it was made from discarded scraps of fabrics from other flag orders. It would later become the best-selling flag that the company ever carried.